Welcome to Post-Mao China. When Mao Zedong died in Beijing in September of 1976, the China that he had presided over was a much different place than the China that we know today. It was closer, in fact, to today's North Korea, perhaps. It was a dark, and compared to the rest of East Asia, backward place, as East Asia had roared forward in the post-war period, while China had, particularly from 1958 to the mid-1970s, stagnated. A country that had been beset by political terror and political instability, by mass famine and insufficiency in the economy, and by international isolation, at least until the early 1970s. Self-isolating as well as being isolated, first from the West and then from the Eastern Bloc. It was not in an auspicious position, in short. What we're trying to address in a series of interviews now with colleagues here at Harvard is the question, how did China do so comparatively well in the period from 1978 to the present? If the first 30 years of the People's Republic was one of great limitations and great disasters, the nearly 40 years since the death of Mao Zedong have been nothing short of transformational. Rather than give you a decade by decade or year by year account, I've invited several of my Harvard colleagues to come and talk about this period from different perspectives and indeed from different scholarly disciplines. We'll be joined by a sociologist, an economist, and a political scientist, each one of whom have deeply studied and been influential in the study of post-Mao China. Our first guest will be Professor Ezra Vogel from our Department of Sociology, professor in the social sciences here at Harvard, who has just completed a magisterial biography on the architect of the post-Mao reforms, Deng Xiaoping. And he will talk about Deng. He will talk about his book, which has been translated and is widely read in the People's Republic today. And he will talk about the policy choices that China faced in the late 1970s, 1980s, and early 1990s, through and after the great confrontation at Tiananmen of 1989. Then Professor Dwight Perkins from our economics department and the longtime director of the Harvard Institute for International Development will be joining us to talk about macro trends in the Chinese economy, policy choices that were made, and what are the great challenges that the Chinese economy faces domestically and internationally today. And Professor Perkins comes to this from a lifetime of study of China's economy and economic history, but also from the point of view of somebody who, at least in my experience, has been more consistently right about the Chinese economy than anybody else. And third, we'll be joined by the director of the Harvard Yenjing Institute, Professor Elizabeth Perry, a noted political scientist who also has a historian's flair for looking at the present in the light of the past, and the past in part in the light of the present. And she will help us to understand what she has called China's resilient authoritarianism and the still impressive capacity of the Chinese state to navigate what to other governments might be formidable challenges. I think you're going to learn a lot from my friends and colleagues here at Harvard, and I hope you enjoy these interviews.